the month of November, 1864. The Battle of Gettysburg was won. The Battle of Vicksburg was won. And Atlanta was captured. But despite all these great victories that we had, Grant was never able to close the war, to end it. In fact, the Confederacy fought fiercely after that and won some very significant battles. And so I think that we forget about this sometimes. He's still alive. The Confederacy is still alive. And here we are in 1864, November of 1864, and the war is going to continue. So where are we today? Okay, here's what's been happening. The election, rather than the war, commanded most of the attention in the North. The election of Lincoln, the re-election of Lincoln. For the first time in history, the armies of a major nation, now remember this, the armies of a major nation would vote during the war. The first time this has ever happened. Rampant electioneering involved not only politicians, but army officers as well. President Lincoln was still anxious about the outcome. And the reason he was because the election that had just been held. The October state elections had given him more confidence because he could see that there was a positive reaction coming about. General McClellan remained popular among those discontented with the progress of the war. So he was a very strong contender at this particular point. But the victories at Atlanta and in the Shenandoah on the coast and in Missouri had undoubtedly quieted the opposition. Southerners, of course, also followed the election campaign with interest. Some favored McClellan as he might bring peace to the country. Others favored Lincoln because at least they knew who they were getting and what he stood for. After all, McClellan might just try to restore the Union, and that was a point of discussion. Southerners did not want any part of the old nation. Then during November the 1st through the 4th, the Confederate General Forrest continued harassing Sherman's supply line to Georgia along the Tennessee River. Placing batteries on the West Bank, he shelled the federal gunboats, transports, barges, bulging warehouses, open storage, 2 wagon trains, and the Union soldiers. And the Union soldiers' supply base in Johnsville. Confederates estimated the damage at $6,700,000. That was a lot more money then than it is today. But Union officers were censured for negligence to allow that to happen. And Forrest, he just pulled away unscathed. November the 7th, at a meeting in Richmond, President Davis seemed surprisingly optimistic, despite all the losses that they've had. He played down the capture of Atlanta. He saw no vital points of trouble in the financial outlook and was far from discouraging. He recommended that the government purchase slaves for work in the army, and then, afterwards, free them at discharge. He did not advocate the use of Negroes as soldiers, but left the door open in case the situations changed. He favored a negotiated peace, but only with independence, not, quote, unconditional submission to degradation. In the United States, this day was the election eve. On November the 8th, which was a Tuesday, Lincoln was elected president, with Andrew Johnson of Tennessee as vice president. McClellan lost, of course, and he resigned from the Army. Regarding his election, his only comment was, quote, "For my country's sake, I deplore the results." The Republicans increased their strong majority in the House to over 2/3 and retained a heavy plurality in the Senate. Lincoln stated that the result of the election, quote, "will be to the lasting advantage, if not the very salvation of the country." On Thursday, November the 10th, Sherman, in Georgia, continued to destroy the railroad and other bases in Atlanta and set out on his own. He stated that, quote, "the Army will forage the country liberally during the march," end quote. If they met resistance from inhabitants, Army commanders should, quote, "should enforce a devastation more or less relentless." And furthermore, horses, mules, wagons might be appropriated freely as they plunged deeper into Georgia towards the sea. In response to another victory celebration, Lincoln pointed out that the election, in the midst of a civil war, showed, quote, "how sound and how strong we are." Now he called for unity in a common effort to save our common country. Sherman's army now stood detached and cut off from all communication with the rear. 4 corps, totaling 60,000 infantry, plus about 5,000 artillery, were ready for the great military adventures. Sherman wanted to concentrate on destroying the city of Atlanta, except for houses and churches. He wanted to make sure that the military, manufacturing, and communication facilities could not be immediately reactivated by the Confederacy. That's the reason for the devastation and this destruction. President Lincoln accepted the resignation of Major General George B. McClellan and named Sheridan to the rank of Major General in the regular army. And finally, on November 15th and 16th, General Sherman left Atlanta, starting a new campaign. Behind him was a smoking city and its economy in ruins. What people who remained there were desolate and bitter. Since all communication with the rear was cut, the North would hear little from him for weeks to come. And that, my friends, is the news up to today in 1864. Thank you.